Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Fool Seder. Da, 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 da. I should have brought my kazoos, actually. I have a bag of kazoos normally. Actually, you know what? I've got one right here. So, on everyone's behalf, I will kind of kazoo shofar ourselves into this learning session on the Fool Seder. Ready? One, two, three. Oh. Here we are. We're ready. Okay. Welcome, welcome, welcome. If you've never met me before, that's a pretty good introduction to me. My name is Ben Freeman, and I am here as a member of the Lab Shul Ritual team,
Yes.
joined by Naomi Less, joined by Sarah Sokalik, and
Uh,
joined by all of you. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So glad that you are taking this time to reflect on a pretty remarkable co-occurrence that is happening this year, which is that you may have heard the first night of Passover is happening on April Fool's Day. So this gathering here on Zoom, we will not be moving through an entire Seder, just to assuage you of that, if that was a thing you were wondering about. What we're going to do instead is we're going to reflect on, think about, play with some ideas around what could it look like to activate the fool's perspective on Passover, the fool's perspective on Seder, so that we can see if the fool as an archetype has something liberating to offer us in the context of this yearly journey toward liberation. So welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you for being here. Naomi, if we can put into the chat those lyrics, thank you so much. And I see people are already introducing themselves in the chat. Please continue to do so with your name, where you're zooming in from, as well as a favorite April Fool's Day prank that you have experienced. We're going to hear some of those in a moment. But we'll start with just these words that we were just listening to from the Beatles. Day after day, alone on a hill, the man with the foolish grin is keeping perfectly still. But nobody wants to know him. They can see he's just a fool. And he never gives an answer. But the fool on the hill sees the sun going down, and the eyes in his head see the world spinning round. There is a way in which the fool, as an archetypal figure, gets pushed to the edge of the frame by those that are in control, usually of where we're looking. Don't listen to that guy over there. He's got nothing important to say. But have you ever noticed that sometimes the clown, the comedian, the fool has the most incisive thing to say? Have you ever had that experience where someone says something funny, irreverent, silly, and you go, you know, there's actually something worth listening to there? Anyone had that experience before? A few of us. Yeah. So that's part of what we're here to investigate. Is there a kind of wisdom that the fool brings that is special, unique, and sometimes even more deep than the wisdom that comes from looking at things head on or looking at things in the normative way? That's what we're here to investigate tonight. So, just want to quickly say, by way of further introduction of me, my personal Torah, one could say, my personal like guiding wisdom that really moves and excites me is play as a spiritual practice. I am very, very excited about what happens when we get into experiences of play and find that inner child that still, I assure you, is present within all of us. When we get permission to look at reality a little bit more fluidly, a little bit more gooily, and we see what's really going on underneath. That's where I personally come alive. Some of you, I know Cody is here. Cody and I went to graduate school together, and I'll just show you that my graduate school thesis, and I'll actually maybe spotlight myself for a moment so you can see this. My graduate school thesis looks like this. It's a collage book, which in some ways you might say is a bit of a foolish thing to do. Oops, that's a foolish thing. That one's not glued down. But this whole thesis was all about play as a spiritual practice. And the page that I flipped to right away says, the essential experience of play is going willingly with others and with ourselves somewhere we cannot predict. This is spiritually and politically potent because play reveals us to ourselves in unexpected ways and helps us be in relationship differently to the social realities we are part of creating. That's the invitation and the invocation that I want to bring us into for what it looks like to embody the Fool's perspective. So let's hear some of these favorite pranks, these favorite April Fool's Day tricks and pranks that we've played or have been played on us. I'm seeing some in the chat. I'll read some, but I wonder if there are other folks that would like to unmute themselves. We'll have time for just a few to share a favorite April Fool's Day prank that you've experienced. Switching the salt and sugar, that's in the chat.
Is the audio on? This is Beverly, and when I lived in Norway, I didn't know that on April Fool's, the main newspaper in Norway, always printed a story that was an April Fool's thing, and I didn't really know about that. So I read this thing about they were going to have a dehydrated beer and wine at the Vinmonopol, which is where they sell the beer and wine, that you could take hiking. And you had to go to the last page in the paper. In the last page of the paper, they showed a photo of little pieces of foil wrap things that were frozen in the refrigerator. And then my friend told me it was a joke. But the next morning, many people arrived and got in line at the Vinmonopol to buy dehydrated beer and wine.
Oh my goodness. So it worked.
They do something every year.
Incredible. Thank you so much for sharing that. Let's get a few more and notice what happens when we hear about these. Just notice what's going on in your face, in your mind, in your spirit. A few more that we might hear of. Come on, someone be a brave fool.
All right. I put in the chat that I have been executing April Fool's gags on my wife since her father pushed it on to me. We weren't even married yet. So I'm talking mid-70s. So I have created at least 50 April Fool's pranks of varying levels of success. One of the ones that worked the best, I'll try to tell it quickly, but Debbie was working on a conference at Versailles with the New York Times. I took a Daily Beast, an online, daily thing with excerpts, and I went in and I deleted a passage and I wrote a paragraph about, with a picture of the Hall of Mirrors at Versailles, that the French Ministry of the Interior had recognized that the Versailles mirrors in the Hall of Mirrors had not been cleaned since the 1880s, and that they were going to clean all of these mirrors, and it was going to require closing because of solvents and things, would require closing all of Versailles from October 1st to November 15th, knowing full well her conference was in that time frame. I had a friend of hers from San Francisco email it to Debbie and say, gee, I saw this, thought it might be interesting. She saw this and was aghast and was about to send it to the fashion editor of the Times to say, oh my God, what are we going to do? And she said, let me click through and read the full article. And I actually have a signal to her that I build into my gags so she knows it's a gag. Because if she got that far, this would have been a little embarrassing, and she saw the signal and realized that it was a gag.
Well, thank you. First of all, that is hilarious. And I can't wait to hear about the other 49 we didn't hear about.
Oh my God.
We're not going to do that at this moment, but thank you for queuing us up.
Another hour.
I know, I'm going to give you a call later and hear about the rest of them. But I think you've also really beautifully set up, Stuart, that the fool is dangerous. The fool destabilizes reality in a way that can have real consequences. And that can lead to things that feel unsavory, or it can lead to things that actually feel really, really deeply satisfying and beautiful and liberating. And it's my contention that that might be one of the gifts of Seder and April Fool's Day overlapping. But I just want to ask the room a little bit while we're still thinking about this before we flip into more of our content around Seder. Why do we love April Fool's Day pranks? Those, maybe not all of us do, but for those of us that find them exciting and funny and silly and lovely, like what do we love about them? We know it's coming every year, but what is it about that so delights us? What do you think? No wrong answers. And I can't see you all very easily, so just unmute whenever you want to speak. Thanks, Naomi. What do you think? Yeah, Renee, come on in.
I think people love to laugh, or I mean, there's something about being fooled, and then you feel, I mean, if it's done in a good spirit, then there's something about it that's funny and liberating, that kind of thing, I think.
Yeah, so we can.
I can't believe that really happened, or you know, like you're in an altered state.
Yeah, it's totally an altered state. It like gets us acquainted with the limits of what we think we know to be true, and reveals to us something about our own fallibility and when we're in the position of being fooled, which can be really uncomfortable and also really, really funny and sweet. Maybe one more thought on like, why do we love these so much? What is it about them that makes us smile? I can share my favorite. My mom happens to be in the room. So, Mom, thanks for, you always give me so much material to share on Lab Shul Zoom calls. Every year on April Fool's Day, when we went to the kitchen and opened the refrigerator, what would we find in there but a carton of green milk? A carton of green milk. Was it other colors too, or was it always green? I remember it being green.
I think it was green, but I didn't say that because couldn't remember if that was St. Patrick's Day or if that was for April Fool's.
That's a good question. Well,
I
maybe
don't remember.
We were a very foolish bunch, so maybe we did it.
But there was green milk. But going back to your other question, so
Yeah.
Renee says laugh, which is important. But I think it also only works with people you trust.
Hmm.
So I think trust is an important part of a good April Fool's prank.
Love
Just
that.
a thought.
Love that observation. So I trusted you, my mom, to not poison me with completely rotten milk. And yet, in every single moment of like the spoon touching the cereal with the green milk, every moment until it actually got to my tongue, there was the tiniest bit of danger of like, is this actually spoiled milk? Is that really what I'm about to ingest? It's green. It's not supposed to look like that. So again, there was something about like which version of reality is real, which version of reality is true. So let us, you know what I'm going to do, Naomi? Thank you for being ready to flow with the flow as we change it in real time. I want to move us to actually thinking about Seder first, by which I mean, Naomi, that we're skipping down to the section that's called fundamentals, and we're going to look at slide 2. And we're going to come back to the other exercise, but we're going to go to a slide so that we can get a little bit more oriented to Seder specifically. So thank you, Naomi, for being willing to flow in real time with us. So Seder, the word Seder means, anyone know? You can put it in the chat, you can shout it out. Yeah, Lori. Order. Yes.
Order.
Seder does in fact mean order. So let me just get this slide up here. So Seder means order. And when we move through a Seder, we move through this sequence of steps that takes us from the very beginning of the evening to the very, 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 very end. And it's highly scripted, right? If you ever sat around a Seder table and you have your Passover Haggadah, this book that leads you through, you'll see there's like stage directions, right? It's like drink your wine, reclining to the left. Okay, it's very, 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 very structured. But what kind of order is a Seder? What is a Seder there to help us do? Let's go to our next slide, Naomi. We can imagine, if we want, the Seder as a kind of hero's journey. And in this way of thinking about the Seder, each of us starts in the ordinary world, the world where we actually all reside. And the Seder tells us from the beginning, it's like, we're going to go back into this story that you've actually lived many, many times before. Your ancestors were slaves in Egypt. Your ancestors were oppressed in a place called Mitzrayim, which in Hebrew is connected to the word narrow. So there's both a connotation of it with the word Egypt is how we've typically translated it, but there's this mythic and mystic connotation of like your ancestors were in a constricted place. And through this incredible tale of faith and divine miracles, they eventually got liberated out the other side. But the Seder tells us very, very specifically, in every single year, you ought to tell this story as if it happened to you personally. It is not a story about some other people, some other time. It is a story about you and you and you and all of us right here, right now, again. So we can decide, if we wish, to think of each Seder as an opportunity to go on our own very real, very deep hero's journey from the ordinary world of constriction back through the mythic story that brings us around to liberation. And we can see if by going through this pathway, we come out with something new and something liberating and something healing on the other side. Now, the Fool. What does the Fool bring to this recipe, this concoction? Let's go to the next slide, Naomi. This is a meme I truly just found 45 minutes ago. And it says, I'll read for anyone that can't see clearly on the screen, POV, which means point of view. POV, you're the king and I, the court jester, just made an inappropriate joke about your virility in front of the whole royal court. And you want to punish me, but you can't react in anger, lest the court think my joke is true. The fool's role is often to act in disorderly ways that actually point to the underlying power structure that is at work in the world. Say that again. The fool's role is often to act in disorderly ways that point to the underlying power structure that's really at work. So the jester, the court jester, is this incredible figure that is very close to the seat of power in the royal system. And the jester, you may remember, is usually carrying around a little scepter of sorts that has a little tiny talking head that's his bobblehead. And the jester is parodying the king or the royal to their face. And they have this permission to do that for some strange reason that may have something to do with trust. And it may have something to do with like regulating how much critique gets to happen within the system. But everything that they're doing is also pointing at the power structure. They're saying, hey, that's the one in power, not me. But actually, I have this really incredible power to poke fun at it at the same time. It's destabilizing. So the fool's role is often around disordering reality so that we can get a clearer look. Therefore, and let's go to the next slide, Naomi, and then we'll come out of the slides for a moment. Seder, being all about order, plus the fool's role equals what? Well, my contention and my hope for us this year, my sort of wish and blessing for us, is that the fool's perspective on Seder can help us question more deeply the order of things as we think they have to be, so that we can really get underneath and do the deeper work of what the Seder is actually inviting us to, which is to get free. It has been observed, hey, if we got free through the course of this whole thing and the course of this story, why do we come back every single year and we're slaves again? What's going on? Well, the work of getting free is a little bit deeper and richer and more complicated than just doing it all at once. We have to keep trying and keep trying and keep trying. And we find ourselves back in the same situations of unfreedom again and again. And maybe, I'm not at all promising, that the Fool will help us fully resolve that and get totally free forever, but maybe the Fool will help us see underneath to what's there. And we're going to do 2 exercises. And this is all setting us up to a moment where in probably 15 minutes, I think, around then, we'll go off into breakout rooms. And when we're in breakout rooms, your topic of conversation with each other will be, what am I going to try bringing to my Seder this year that might be different? Or what is it that how might I invite people to embody a little bit more of a foolish perspective? So we're synthesizing a lot of stuff here at the front with a lot of time for you to actually talk with each other about it. And then we'll have time at the end for you to bring those back, and we'll see what people have learned, but just to give you a sense of where we're headed. But what I would like to invite you to do is, and I think for all of us in a moment, if we're not already muted, we'll want to be muted for this exercise. I will mute myself too. We are going to try an exercise that is all about calling things the wrong name. So in a moment, I am going to do my best impression of a Tibetan singing bowl. It sounds like this. Dong. When I do that, all of our invitation for the next 60 seconds is going to be to move around the space where we actually are and point at things and very emphatically call them the wrong name. So for instance, I will point at this and call this Beyonce. I will point at this and call it a whale. And I will point at this and call it my hippopotamus. And I will just do the very best that I can to override the part of my brain that says, that's not a hippopotamus, that's a piece of plastic. I will do my best to push past that and just call things the wrong name. And then we will come back. I'll do my impression of my singing bowl again. And we will just see how we feel. And then we'll talk a little bit more from there. Any questions on what this exercise is that we're about to engage in together? No worries, Sarah. See you later. Great. Okay, ready? Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Dong. Dong. Okay. What did you notice? How do you feel? Just a few shares. What does it feel like to get into that way of looking at the world? What did it bring up?
Call things that aren't what they are.
What was that like? How was it? Easy, hard?
I felt shame and like a failure.
Shame and what was the other?
Like a failure.
I can identify with that. Anyone else? Oh, sorry, Nancy, you accidentally muted. One more time. Or I may not, maybe not as Nancy and there's 2 people there. Come back.
And I felt it really fun to give myself permission to call things whatever came to my mind, as kooky as I wanted it to be.
Great. Sue, I saw that you unmuted. Did you have something to add too?
Oh yeah, I felt liberated.
Great. It was funny, it made me laugh, it was silly, it was surprising. Magda saw themes. Do you want to say anything more about that, Magda, or adult education unmuted as well?
I felt like I was lying.
Like you were lying. Yeah, it felt untrue, for sure.
Is that Rabbi Klein?
Yep, it's Rabbi Klein.
Hi.
We recognize your voice.
Nice to hear you. I laughed at myself when I couldn't come up with something for a particular object. I do want to also hold up that this idea of shame and failure, I super identify with that. I have done this exercise so many times, and it's often very fun. And also at the same time, I often am like, dang, like, why can't I just think about this as anything other than what it really is? The fool's role is hard. It's not as easy as it might look from the outside. It felt true to see objects as more than I first associate. Awesome. Thanks, Matthew. All right. So let's try something. This is going to be, I think, a first time experience for all of us, I imagine. We are going to try bringing this foolishness to something that actually comes from the Seder. And in order to do this, I'd like to invite up a Fool's panel, 4 people that are willing to be spotlighted in front of the room. And to be on the Fool's panel, guess what? There's literally no way to do this wrong. All you have to do is answer a question that I'm going to ask you with anything other than the right answer. And many of us that have been through a Seder will know the right answer, or one of the right answers. And that's literally the only thing you can't answer. Everything else you can say. Is anyone, and these are questions about Passover, is anyone willing to be spotlighted as one of the Fool's panel? Great. We've got our folks over here raising hands. Thank you, Naomi. A few more, three more.
I can't see now that I've spotlit, so can you tell me the names?
Yes. Also, Nancy, who are the 2 people in this window? It's Nancy and
Beverly.
Beverly.
I mean, there are 2.
Yeah.
Do you both want to be on the panel?
No.
Yes.
No.
Yeah.
Just
Okay. So that's one person. 3 more people then to be on the panel of Fools. Lori, thank you, Lori. Again, there's literally no way to do it wrong. Nathan? Awesome.
I'm happy to. I just can't figure out my video at the moment.
Don't worry about that.
So is
Nathan, Matthew. Matthew's iPhone is what that.
I can't spotlight you, Matthew, unfortunately, because you're not on the video, but we'll hear your
voice. That'll be totally fine. All right, so round of applause for our panel of fools. Woohoo! Thanks for being fools in front of the room. It's a really fun place to be. So fools, I'm going to ask you a question. And again, if you know the right answer, that is the only thing you can't say. You get to say literally any other thing that you want. So panel of fools, on this night of Passover, why do we eat matzah? Go.
Because it tastes good.
Great. The most foolish answer of all. What else?
We love crumbs.
Yes, we love crumbs.
It's great nutrition.
It's fabulous nutrition. And?
Because it was tasteless to keep us in Egypt.
Ooh, fun. Okay. Applause. Excellent, excellent, excellent. Panel of fools. On this night, why do we eat bitter herbs?
Because the Pharaoh was bitter.
She certainly was. Darn. What else?
I'm like, because it makes us thirsty.
Because they help with constipation.
Brought on by the matzah.
Absolutely. Anything else, Fool, Lori, you want to add to that? Or you just want to add on to the one before?
Yes. No, it's a major food group.
Yes, it is. That's right. The bitter herbs are a major food group. That's correct. Round of applause. All right, panel of fools. Why is it that on this night, normally we don't even dip a single time? Why do we dip twice? What's that about?
Because double dipping is so hygienic.
Totally. It's the most hygienic way to do it.
Because you won't understand the meaning of Passover if you only do it once.
Ooh.
Because we have a little bit of dementia going on and we can't remember that we already dipped.
Wow. And one more perspective.
We like to get ourselves in trouble.
We sure do. We sure do. Round of applause. And panel of fools, this is your last question. Thank you so much for leading us through really understanding the meaning of Passover. Why is it that on this night we recline? Why do we recline?
Carrying our parents is a burden.
For sure. For sure. What else?
By the second hour, we're so tired, it's the only option available.
Absolutely.
To get a better view of the ceiling.
Uh-huh.
Oh, now I have to go last. I'm like really trying to think of something really funny, and I can't because there's nothing funny about reclining.
You found it right there. You found the funny thing about reclining by saying exactly.
Yeah, because there's no, yeah, that's my answer.
Because there's nothing funny about reclining, and
Yeah,
that's that on that. Gorgeous. All right. Excellent. Incredible. Thank you, panel of fools. Naomi, we can release them from their captivity as our focus, folks. Quick, just rounds of reaction. What did it feel like to ask 4 questions that many of us are very familiar with and hear some unfamiliar answers? What was fruitful about that, if anything? Hi, Philip. Welcome.
Hey, Ben.
Good to see you. So we just asked our classic 4 questions and we heard many foolish answers to them. What was that like? Yeah, Tara.
It just frees us from kind of pontificating in the seriousness of like the coffee sponsored Haggadah.
Yeah,
I mean, it just gets real, or at least it frees us from being so sanctimonious.
Great. So one of the things that can happen when we gather around the table for this ritual is that everyone looks at the book in front of them and they think, oh, this book has the answers to all of these hard questions we're asking about the human condition. If I just read it carefully, I'm sure I'll figure out what this is all about. The fool instead might encourage us to say, no, you silly person, don't think you can ever find the answer just by reading a book. You got to talk to each other and you got to actually feel into it. And you have to feel into how mysterious this all actually is if you're ever going to arrive at something that feels like a true answer, right? So that's me expounding on what you're saying. But yes, I agree. That's something that can be freed up by this. Anything else that came up in hearing some foolish answers to 4 very familiar questions?
Well, those answers are very good.
Yeah. What did you like about those answers? I agree.
Because the answers that the Haggadah gives are not very clear. And in fact, if you stick with a straight Haggadah, the answers are never given. In my opinion, it's one question and 4 answers. Each of those, why it in Manish Tana means what's different about this night, and it's Matzah and Maror and so on, and those are the answers, not that. But what this group has been doing was imagining that these are questions and coming up with perfectly reasonable answers. You eat matzah because you like matzah. That's what I do. Anyway.
Totally. Thank you, Rabbi Klein. Love that. One last thought on this before we move to our next thing.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi. It's the first reaction was why not, with the responses. And also because they were out there, it also created some questions to me to then have a conversation about, like, oh, that's interesting. Tell me more. And it's because it's a new perspective, it just brings things fresh, still trying to get to an answer.
Gorgeous. Thank you. There was something actually that's bringing to mind. We had a retreat last weekend, a passage retreat. This was a rite of passage experience for a group of folks in their 40s and 50s. And we were investigating the Passover Seder and the Passover Haggadah and this whole story and this whole technology of moving through this ritual as a corollary to our own stories of becoming. And something that happened at some point in one of the sessions was that we were talking about, I remember where we got to. I'm trying to remember if I can remember how we got there. We were talking about this impulse that we often have, especially when we have lots of children at the Seder, to make everything very entertaining, to make sure that people are able to attend to this whole thing that's happening. And there was kind of a debate that erupted in the room of like, well, is it good to get everyone entertained, or should we actually like learn to be okay with being bored by the Seder too? And not just by the Seder, but like we're all living in a time of immense overstimulation. Many of us have lost much of our capacity to be bored because there's always something else to flip to. And might we want to rediscover that? And we talked about that for a while. People were kind of unsatisfied with that dichotomy. And one of the things that I ended up offering back to the room at one point was, it sounds like some of what we're wanting and yearning for is to not collapse the questions, to not have every question have a clear and obvious and stale answer, but rather, again, to let the questions really be sincere and mystifying questions so that we can feel ourselves reaching toward answers that are a little bit beyond our comprehension. So I think there's something similar going on here. So I just want to offer like two more touch points from the Jewish tradition that will lead us into our time for breakout rooms. So we're swiftly moving toward a time where you'll be talking a lot to each other. So Naomi, we're going to go to slide 8. And this is just a beautiful 2 lines of text from the Proverbs. If you see a man who thinks himself wise, there is more hope for a dullard or a fool than for him. If you see someone who goes around saying, hey, I'm really wise, I've got all the answers, it's actually more hope for the fool, right? Speaking to some of what we were just talking about, when we get into a mode where we think there's a single answer, or especially when someone's putting that in our face, it's wise to question whether or not that's really, in fact, true. And to bring that to something that I know we've also all encountered when we've been at a Passover Seder, if we've been at one, is this famous framework. Naomi will go to the next slide. The 4 children. Anyone remember these 4 children? So we've got in this diagram, starting on the right, Chacham, the wise child, who literally is a king in this case. So this wise child is rendered as a king. We've got Rasha, the child that is evil or wicked in some way. We've got Tam, the simple child. And literally, in this one, V'she'eno, the one that is not, the one that does not even know how to ask, is rendered as a jester with his juggling balls. But a question we might really sincerely ask ourselves is, which one of these is really the fool? Is it the one who doesn't know how to ask? Maybe. Is it the simple child? Sometimes the simple child is the one that we think is going to be the fool. Is the wise child the fool? Because the wise one is the one that the proverb just warned us about on the last slide, the one that thinks they know the answers. Is the wicked child bringing the fool's perspective to the Seder? I certainly don't know the answer. I don't think there is a single answer. But that's the kind of thing we want to now move ourselves into breakout rooms to discuss. So Naomi, we're going to come out of there. And we're just going to put into the chat a couple of prompts for you to consider, which are in the right-hand column, Naomi. And so this invitation, you're going to have about 25 minutes, 25 minutes in groups of 3. So you've got lots of spacious time. And the prompts that you'll see in the chat are what we thought you might want to talk about. And also, you've been on this Zoom for a while thinking about a lot of ideas. And so you might find that your conversation goes other places too. And that's okay. Don't feel bound by the questions that are in the chat, but they're there to guide you if you want what to talk about. So, how might I concretely bring a foolish spirit, a playful, disorderly frame of mind or heart to my holiday gatherings this year? What might that look like? So you might be someone that is hosting a Seder next week or going to a Seder. Now, if you're the host or if you're a guest, you might have a different sense of permission for how foolish to be. But you might want to think about, like, literally, how would I bring this to my Seder this year? What would that look like? What are some foolish questions I want to bring this year beyond the traditional 4, right? We asked 4 questions. We heard foolish answers to them. And some of what you might want to ask is a different question altogether that you might bring to the Seder. I've never really understood why we do this thing at the Seder. Here's my dumb question about that. Great, bring that to the Seder. See what happens if we ask the questions we're not supposed to ask, but the ones that are genuine. And what would I put on the Seder plate this year? If I was going to add a symbol, is there something that I would bring to the Seder plate, to the holiday table, that would make the fool's perspective a bit more apparent? Again, these questions are the ones we thought you might want to talk about. You might have others that are coming up. That's all good. You're going to have time, as we said, 20, 25 minutes in breakout rooms with just 3 people. So introduce yourself, say, hello, why are you here? Glad to meet you. And then get into it with each other. See what this brings up. And when we bring you back, we'll have time to hear what you learned, what it brought up, and we will then bring ourselves to a close. Okay? Any questions before we open up those breakout rooms? Okay, go be foolish, have fun. I think Naomi's gonna open those up now. You should see an invitation shortly. Click accept and off you'll go. Thanks, everybody.
Okay. How much time are we going? Well, let's press pause on the recording.
Thank you. Welcome back.
Oh.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back. These are the faces of some holy fools indeed. I got to go around to a couple of the rooms and just visit and hear a little bit of what folks were talking about. If I didn't get to your room, it was not personal. I just got so engrossed in the conversations that I ended up visiting for. And we have some time now to collect some insights and some questions, perhaps, and some concrete alterations to Seder that we might make this year. So very interested to hear what came up in those conversations in your breakout room that you'd like to share with this wider group of fools.
Why are you avoiding your mother? You did not come into our room.
That was highly foolish of me. I agree. Thank you for asking.
No, that was a fantastic conversation.
Would you say that again, please?
Oh, I was giving Ben a hard time as to why he did not visit his mother in the breakout room.
Totally fair question. Sorry, Mom.
It was great. And I think for me, it left the understanding of what role the fool can play that other roles might have a harder time, which is asking, and it's kind of like what your slide is, getting away with saying something that can't be said. We started talking very briefly just about the politics of the war, and could we bring that up? And some people were like, nope, can't bring that up. That's a subject we can't touch. For better or worse, it is what it is, but it just made me think about how can we have these conversations so that they can be real. And in my family, we have a new policy. If you see something, say something. As our parents get older, and we've been quiet about it. We've been having these echo chambers and realizing that's not going to solve anything, and for what we want to bring into this world. And so the role of the fool, for me, in this conversation, really solidified the importance of it. And I was sharing that for me, April Fool's Days is one of the most incredible holiday of the year. And really, my brother's on this conference call, which I didn't know he was going to be on. And if I had known what this was about, I would have been setting something up to do an April Fool's joke on him. That's my regret. But for next year, there's always hope. So thank you. I just want to say thank you. I'm
Thank
done.
you. Beautifully stated. I mean, there's a paradox that I'm sure many of us can relate to, of like, we come around the table this one time a year with people we love and may feel close to in many ways, and we tell a story about like the things that matter the most, or certainly matter very, very deeply and a lot in the human experience. And sometimes we wonder, can I have a real conversation about this or that topic, or is this going to become too contentious, too fractious? Will this throw us off the ability to just move through the steps? And perhaps the fool's perspective can find an elegant way of asking a question that it feels like it can't be asked, because we're in a different and more playful state of mind, and maybe we can test the limits of that differently. What else came up in these conversations in breakout rooms? Yeah.
I had a terrific conversation with Tara. I'll let her speak about her things that she was sharing. The one thing I was thinking about is that the fool stands on the outside and is able to critique, make fun of, change things that are in the middle and that are assumed to be the way things are done. And it's very lab Shul to have that attitude. And that's probably why this was all resonating with me. But what I was saying to Tara is that in the Seder next week, I don't anticipate any arguments. Everyone is on the same wavelength. It's basically Tribeca and Brooklyn people. So who's gonna disagree? And so I'm struggling with how to ignite that attitude of standing to the periphery and thinking about the issues we're discussing with our human rights agata, and how we think like that the first question should really be, how have we changed? Why are we different tonight than we were a year ago when this same group met? And so I hope we can ignite a conversation and have the fool's perspective, which is the perspective of not accepting things as they've been handed to us, but instead looking at them from our own perspective, with our own either sense of humor or sense of irony or sense of shock or sense of longing. So I hope that works.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the shift of the question, and it's actually one of the suggestions that Lab Shul offered in this year's Seder, SAYDER resources, that instead of how is this night different, how are we different? And it offers 4 different questions. So if people want a little help moving away from the text, if you could give the link to Seder, I think that would, oh, you have it there, that would be great. we talked in our group about letting the guests and in some cases the children kind of lead the way in reinventing segments of the Seder. And I find that delightful. Like, I'm happy to meet the kids wherever they are. So either being the kid or letting the kids lead is going to work for us.
I know Renee was trying to speak, and were you having trouble with your sound?
No, I was waiting for others. We were talking a lot about a spectrum of foolishness. Like, part of what we said was that there are times that being in a prank and being pranked was not fun. And we decided that the fool didn't have to be funny. Please, my partners, please uh, add to this. Yeah, I was speaking with Nathan and Cody, and we talked about also I was thinking of in Shakespeare or in other kinds of plays where the fool is always the one who can tell the truth to power. In fact, that's the whole purpose. So we were talking about comedians or people who have ways in which they counter the norm. And sometimes people laugh because they know it's true, right? And so we were looking at a kind of range of things, and we talked about foolish questions that we've experienced at Seder's. Like, why do you do the same ritual every year? How come you just keep doing the same thing over and over again? That was a question that was being asked at one of my Seders. Even with different Haggadahs, it was still the question.
Totally.
Does anybody from our group want to say anything more? Just
really
different.
that was a really good recap. That was everything. You said it so much better than I would have.
I love the observation and the curiosity about, does the fool have to be funny? And I'll add to that too, like, is the laughter that often comes up in response to foolishness always a result of humor, or is it sometimes there's also a laughter that can come up as a result of discomfort, right? When we don't know what else to do, sometimes we just laugh because we're so uncomfortable with something. And if the fool's strategy and like secret weapon, but with a less violent metaphor, is disorder, part of what that also is about is unsettling us from our grooves of comfort that we get into. And if we really take seriously this idea that this is your story, this Seder is about you, it's about all of us, then we ought to get really uncomfortable as we go through the narrow place, the constriction of enslavement, and all the way out to liberation. We shouldn't be comfortable that whole time, or else we didn't really do it properly, I would say. And so the fool has a couple of strategies to offer there. Tara, I think you were also going to say something.
Yes, thank you, Ben. Then there was, I think, an order of magnitude is, how does the lab shul way take us from the fool's perspective of the outsider and what that gives us in the freedom to ask and dare and imagine. But how do we then take it into the poetry and then into the mystery of meaning? That to me was, I recognize when I see it, but I can't dissect it. And that's a lovely kind of very humble recognition, but then there's gratitude in the humility of that.
Yes. We have time for maybe one more, if there's one more person that would like to share.
I would like to share.
Great.
What came up for me is actually something serious rather than jester like. But I somehow we got talking about spinning That's what it was. We got talking about spinning. And I thought, I do not want my Seder to be about politics. But the idea of spinning, because the world is spinning. So what do I need to become the eye of the storm? That's a metaphor that I can see myself bringing into the Seder without saying this is happening there and oh my God, this. I mean, that's not useful, but how am I responding? What do I need? What is that straight part in me around what's happening around me, and how might I move with it, through it, past it?
Slow it down.
Thank you. Philip, I did also see that you unmuted. Was there one more thing you wanted to share to close us out from this section?
Oh, something like not the last person, but the next to last person seemed to wonder how to be a jester. And I think the answer to that may be just to let whatever's inside that wants to come out, come out.
Love that.
I find that many times in a situation, Ben can maybe verify this, I'll say something that a lot of people find funny, and I have no idea where it came from, but it just seemed to be it's usually a commentary on something where I think everybody's getting too serious, but you can't just say you're too serious. So I'll be more serious, for example, or something like that.
Yeah. Thank you, Philip. That certainly resonates. Got it, Naomi. I can handle the last part of this. Don't worry. When I've taken clown classes in the past, has anyone else here ever taken a clown class? Okay. Highly recommend. Really hard for thinking people. Okay. And Jews are known for our love of thinking. One of the incredible gifts of clown training is the permission to get stupider and stupider in one sense, but I don't mean to say stupider in response to what you just said, Philip, but what you said was let the thing that's inside just come out rather than obey all of the filters that tell me, no, I shouldn't say this, I shouldn't say this, I should try it this way, I should edit this. The clown way is like, no, just get through all of that crap, because a lot of the crap, not all of it, I'm not going to say that every single filter we should not respond to. There are some filters that are there for really good and important reasons, obviously. And a lot of us are a little overburdened on our filtration of what we're saying on the path from heart to actual, like, saying something real into the room. Many of us get stuck somewhere trying to edit and sound perfect. And the clown way is just to subvert that entirely by being as dumb in a productive and generative way as you can be. And it's really hard. It's really, really, really hard. But what I'd love to bring us into a landing with is a little clip on the internet that some of us may recognize from our own childhoods. Maybe others of us will recognize from being parents of children about my age, and maybe some of us won't recognize at all. But this is one of my all-time favorite pieces of Passover content, which is the Rugrats Passover special. I'm not going to play the whole thing for you, but what I'd like to set up for you is that over the course of this episode from the 90s, Grandpa Boris, who is this very kind of typical Ashkenazi, Eastern European Jewish grandfather in this mixed religion family, finds his way to the attic because he's chasing some of the babies that have gotten lost on their way somewhere during the middle of the Seder. And Grandpa Boris and the babies that are at the center of Rugrats end up in the attic. And one by one, all of the grown-ups that are trying very dutifully to have the Seder the right way, the way that they're supposed to, peel off to figure out, where did Grandpa Boris go? Where did the babies go? Meanwhile, Grandpa Boris is telling the babies an incredible version of the Passover story. And because they're babies, because they are fools in a certain sense that haven't yet learned all of the social codes that teach the rest of us to behave properly, the babies totally get the idea that this is their story. They totally understand. And they imaginatively are in the story the entire episode, while the adults are trying very seriously to do all this symbolic stuff. And by episode's end, everyone's in the attic with none of the things that they would, because also the doors get locked. So everyone's stuck in the attic with none of the things that they need to have the Seder the typical way. And this is a little bit of how the episode ends.
Look, Moses, in front of us! The ocean! Great! All this way for a dead end. Now we gotta turn around. Pharaoh! I got you now, babies! Do something quick, Moses! Come on, Moses!
There you are!
Well, we got
What's happening here? What's everybody doing here? I don't care.
What? I want to hear the end of the story.
Okay, sit down, everybody. Now, the Hebrews were at the edge of the Red Sea, with the ocean in front of them and Pharaoh's army behind. Moses had to do something. He was running out of time.
I hope this works. Wow, now I've seen everything. Get the lead out! This is gonna be good. You're a hero, Moses! You led the babies to freedom! All right, Cynthia. Another flying mess you've gotten us into. Hey!
Gorgeous. All right. Thank you, Naomi. So I wanted to bring us there as we bring ourselves to a close for a couple reasons. We've just spent a bunch of time imagining all of these incredible innovations to the Seder that we might choose to bring next week. And one of the lessons of that episode and that clip is, as long as you have the people around you that you're trying to tell the story to, and you have the power of a good story, which the Passover story is really up there, I would say, on the list of great stories of all time, you have everything you need. And even the proverbial wicked child, in this case, Angelica, who in no uncertain terms becomes the Pharaoh in the story, even she wants to hear the end of that story. And she's the one that says to everyone, stop arguing and stop trying to do this the right way. I want to get to the end. I want to get to the freedom on the other side of this story. So all of the things you just brainstormed, bring them, keep brainstorming them, and don't forget, as long as you have yourself, the people you love, and a good story, you've got everything you need, everything at your disposal. So thank you for being here tonight. We want to let you know about just a couple of things that are going on next. And I'll put some of these into the chat. They're already
in the chat. Ben.
Oh, thanks, Naomi. We've already referenced Seder earlier in this call. This is a session on the resource that we produce every year that are 4 new questions to ask at your Passover Seder. So you can get the resource itself. You can come to the session with Rabbi Amichai that is happening this weekend. We've also got Zen Shabbat this weekend at the New York Zen Center and online. We've got Family Freedom Art Jam. This is a huge collaboration between us and not the Jewish Museum. Is it the Jewish Museum? Did I miss it? So that's happening in person this weekend, as well as Family Lab is also in person this weekend. And we've got the Downtown Seder. That's not a Lab Shul produced event, but an event that Lab Shul has partnered on many times that is happening at City Winery.
And Rabbi Amichai will be making a long-distance appearance.
Great. Awesome. I want to say thank you with a bajillion roses of gratitude to Naomi Les for being here, not only just as herself, but as Zoom Tech, and for doing a lot of improvisational free thinking with me as we swiftly moved around the skeleton of a set list that I had for her and said, just kidding, we're going here, we're doing this, we're doing this. So thank you, Naomi. And thank you, all of you. I saw your question, Nancy, about how we get the resource. I think it should be on our products page on the Lab Shul website. I'll see if I can quickly find it. But as I'm looking for that, wishing you a truly liberating Passover season. Thank you for being here, and can't wait to see you again very soon. Take care, everyone.